Tessa Brighton didn't cry often, but today, the tears wouldn't stop. She sat alone at the edge of Sunset Cliffs, the ocean crashing below her like it was echoing everything inside her chest. Her knees were pulled to her chest, chin tucked down, her favorite hoodie zipped all the way up even though the California sun was still warm. It was supposed to be her wedding day. But instead of walking down an aisle, she was up here alone, heartbroken and furious at herself for wasting 3 years on someone who'd left her 2 weeks before the wedding with nothing but a note and a sorry. She didn't notice the man who had just stepped out of the sleek black Aston Martin parked along the gravel road behind her. He'd seen her as he climbed the trail, her figure small, shoulders hunched, completely still except for the occasional shake from silent sobs. He wasn't usually one to intrude on a stranger's pain, but something about her, something raw and real, made him pause. Roman Tate had come up here to clear his head. He just turned down a contract worth $7 million because it would have meant selling part of his software company to a group of people he didn't trust. He didn't need the money. He was already a millionaire 10 times over. But lately, none of it felt like it mattered. Not the cars, not the penthouse, not the endless meetings or the fake smiles at charity galas. He'd built an empire and realized he still felt empty. Now this woman, this stranger, was crying alone at the edge of a cliff, and for the first time in months, Roman felt something stir in his chest. He cleared his throat gently. "Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I can head the other way if you want some space." Tessa whipped her head around, startled. Her eyes were red, mascara streaked down her cheek. "No, it's fine," she said, quickly wiping her face with her sleeve. "I didn't realize anyone else came up here this late." Roman offered a small, non-threatening smile. "I come here when I need to think. You too?" Tessa gave a weak shrug. "Something like that." He stepped closer but stayed a respectful distance, looking out over the ocean. "Rough day," she let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, you could say that." Roman hesitated. "Want to talk about it?" She looked at him for the first time. He wasn't what she expected. He looked like he belonged in a GQ spread, dark hair, sharp jawline, tall, but there was something kind in his eyes, something real. "Not really," she replied honestly, "but thanks for asking." "Fair enough," he paused. "I can just sit here quietly if that helps." Tessa blinked. "You want to sit here?" He nodded and lowered himself down onto the rocky ledge a few feet away from her. "I figure staring at the ocean's better with company." They sat in silence for a while. The waves crashed below them, the sky turning from gold to soft lavender as the sun dipped lower. After several minutes, Tessa sighed. "Today was supposed to be my wedding." Roman turned his head, surprised. "Oh," she gave a bitter smile. "He left 2 weeks ago, said he wasn't ready, took off to Costa Rica with his surfboard." "I guess I should have seen it coming." Roman's jaw tightened slightly. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, well, I'm the idiot who didn't see the red flags." She looked out again. "I just needed to get away from everyone asking if I was okay. I'm not, and I'm tired of pretending I am." Roman didn't push. He just nodded. "I get that." She glanced over. "What about you? Why are you here?" He hesitated. "Long story, business stuff, saying no to the wrong people, trying to remember why I started any of this in the first place." She raised an eyebrow. "You're in business." Roman gave a small nod. "Tech, I run a company downtown." Tessa didn't press. She wasn't in the mood to talk about anyone else's success, but something about his voice, it wasn't arrogant, it was just tired, like hers in a way. "I used to be a photographer," she said quietly. "Freelance, weddings mostly. Then I started working at this little art shop in Pacific Beach. It's not glamorous, but I liked it." "Used to?" Roman asked. "I quit last month to plan the wedding full time," she said with a laugh that held no humor. "Now I've got no job, no fiancé, and a tuxedo rental I can't return." Roman stared at the ocean. "Do you want to go get dinner?" She blinked. "What?" "I know it sounds crazy, you don't know me, but you look like you need a distraction, and I could use one too." Tessa frowned. "You're asking me to dinner while I'm still wearing my heartbreak hoodie?" Roman grinned. "I think it's a bold fashion statement." She hesitated. "You're serious?" "I'll even let you pick the place, as long as it has food and is nowhere near a wedding cake." Tessa let out a real laugh this time. It surprised her. "Okay," she said slowly, "but only because I'm starving." They walked back to the parking lot and she froze when she saw the sleek black car he walked toward. "That's yours?" she asked. "Yeah," he said casually, unlocking it. She narrowed her eyes. "You said you run a tech company. You didn't say you were loaded," he shrugged. "You didn't say you were supposed to be a bride." She didn't reply, but she got in the car. He drove her to a small rooftop restaurant she'd never even heard of. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy. But the view was incredible and the food smelled amazing. They sat across from each other, the tension slowly being replaced by something lighter. Tessa raised her glass, to heartbreak and strangers. Roman raised his, to second chances and cliffside views. She looked at him. For the first time all day, she didn't feel broken. She felt awake, and he, for the first time in what felt like forever, felt something real stir in his chest he couldn't explain. Neither of them knew it yet, but that night would change everything. The next morning, Tessa stood barefoot in the kitchen of her modest apartment, staring blankly at a half-eaten croissant on her plate. Her mind kept drifting back to the night before the Clifftop, the unexpected dinner, and the man who had appeared out of nowhere and made her laugh when she thought she never would again. She hadn't planned on seeing him again. It had felt like a one-night reprieve from the mess her life had become. But now, with the sunlight creeping through the blinds and the silence pressing in around her, she couldn't stop thinking about how his eyes had softened when she spoke, how he'd listened without trying to fix her, how he hadn't asked for anything in return. A soft knock at her door startled her. She wasn't expecting anyone. She walked over cautiously and peeked through the peephole. Roman Tate. She opened the door slowly. He stood there in a slate gray jacket, one hand holding a white paper coffee cup, the other tucked in the pocket of his jeans. "I figured you might appreciate caffeine," he said, holding the cup out. She blinked. "How do you know where I live? You left your jacket in my car. I found your license in the pocket," he replied calmly. "I promise I'm not a stalker. Just a guy who thought you deserved a decent cup of coffee." She crossed her arms. "You could have just left it at the door." "I could have. But then I wouldn't get to ask if you'd like to come with me to a gallery downtown." Her brow furrowed. "A gallery," he nodded. "You said you were a photographer. I thought you might like it. It's a private exhibit, local artists, not the kind of thing that gets a lot of press." She hesitated, leaning against the doorframe. "Why are you doing this?" Roman looked at her without flinching. "Because I like talking to you. And because I think you've spent enough time letting someone else's decisions define your week." She stared at him for a moment, then reached for the coffee. "Let me change." 20 minutes later, they were driving through the city. Roman didn't fill the silence with small talk. He let her look out the window, let her breathe. It was a quiet kind of kindness, and Tessa found herself relaxing into it more than she expected. The gallery was tucked inside a converted warehouse in the arts district. Inside, soft jazz played from an old speaker, and the scent of coffee and paint lingered in the air. The walls showcased everything from abstract oils to haunting black and white photography. Roman didn't hover. He simply walked beside her, letting her lead. One photograph stopped her cold. It was a shot of a woman, her silhouette captured in shadow as she stood beside a river at dusk. There was something aching in it, something unfinished. "She's waiting," Tessa said softly. Roman looked at the image. "For what?" "Closure," she said. "Or maybe an apology." He glanced at her. "Did you ever get one?" She shook her head. "Not really, just a voicemail he didn't have the guts to leave himself." Roman didn't respond right away. "Then I was engaged once." She turned to him, surprised. He nodded, looking at the photo again. 3 years ago. She said she wanted a life with someone who wasn't married to their ambition. She was right. Tessa studied him. "Do you regret it?" "I regret not seeing what I was becoming." He met her gaze, but not that she left. "I wasn't the man I wanted to be." She didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything at all. Instead, she kept walking, her steps slower now. After the gallery, he took her to a quiet cafe where the tables were small, the chairs mismatched, and the pastries looked like they belonged in a Parisian window. They sat in a corner booth, and for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe without the weight crushing her chest. "I can't decide if you're being generous or if you have a savior complex," she said, slicing into a lemon tart. Roman leaned back. "What if I'm just someone who wants to spend time with you?" She tilted her head. You don't even know me. I know you notice the details in a photograph most people miss. I know you'd rather be honest than polite, and I know you're stronger than whatever you're trying to pretend didn't wreck you." Her fork paused mid-air. "That's a lot to assume after one night." "It's not an assumption," he said quietly. "It's what I saw." She didn't respond, but her eyes didn't leave his. Later, as he drove her home, the sky turning amber behind the skyline, she turned toward him. "What exactly do you do, Roman?" He didn't lie. "I founded a software company when I was 22. We build security infrastructure for global firms." "Is that code for I'm rich enough to own that car and eat at rooftop restaurants whenever I want?" He smiled faintly. "It's code for I work too much and I'm trying to figure out how to stop." She looked out the window again. "You really are full of contradictions. I could say the same about you." When they pulled up to her apartment, she hesitated before getting out. "Why did you really come find me this morning?" He met her eyes. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you sitting on that cliff like the world had forgotten you, and I don't want you to feel like that again." She didn't answer. She just opened the door and stepped out, then turned back, her voice softer. "Thank you. For today." As she walked up the steps, Roman sat in the car a moment longer, hands resting on the steering wheel. He wasn't a man who chased. He didn't need to, not in business, not in life. But something about her felt different. Not fragile, not broken, just real in a way that had been missing from his world for far too long. And for the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or board meetings or the next client acquisition. He was thinking about her. Tessa stood in the center of the gallery's studio room, surrounded by high ceilings and scattered canvases, clutching the worn leather camera bag Roman had dropped off earlier that morning. She hadn't touched her camera in nearly a month. The weight of it in her hands felt unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. Roman's invitation to visit the private gallery had somehow cracked open a door she thought she'd sealed shut. "You still haven't told me what made you stop shooting," Roman said as he leaned against the far wall, a cup of espresso balanced casually in his hand. Tessa adjusted the strap on her shoulder. "I think I just got tired of lying to myself. I was taking pictures of people in love while pretending my own relationship wasn't falling apart." Roman's gaze stayed steady. "And now," she glanced around the studio, her eyes catching on a canvas half painted with a woman's face turned toward the clouds. "Now I'm trying to figure out where I fit without him." He stepped closer, his voice low. "Does it have to be about him at all?" Tessa didn't answer right away. Instead, she unzipped the bag and pulled out her camera, running her fingers over the buttons. "I don't know." Roman gave her space, watching her carefully. "There's a benefit gala Thursday night," he said after a beat. "It's for an education foundation I support. They're looking for a photographer who isn't interested in posing celebrities and capturing champagne flutes." She looked up. "You're asking me to shoot it. You're the only person I know who sees people the way you do." "Honestly," she hesitated. "I haven't done anything like that in months. I don't even know if I remember how to capture." "You do," he interrupted. "You just haven't had a reason to in a while." Tessa looked down at the camera, her thumb brushing over the shutter release. "What's the dress code?" "Black tie," he said. "But I'll take care of that." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not buying me a dress." "I didn't say I was," he replied. "I just said I'd take care of it." She narrowed her eyes. "Roman." He smiled slightly and turned toward the door. "Meet me at the Gilded Room on Thursday, 6 o'clock sharp." Before she could argue, he was already down the hall. Thursday came faster than she expected. The Gilded Room was unlike anywhere Tessa had ever been. The marble floors gleamed under glittering chandeliers, and the entire venue smelled faintly of orchids and expensive perfume. A valet had opened her door before she'd even fully stepped out of the town car Roman sent. The dress waiting for her inside the box had been deep sapphire, structured but soft, with a slit that made her nervous until she put it on and realized how it moved like water when she walked. Roman met her at the entrance. He wore a midnight black tuxedo, tailored perfectly, his cufflinks catching the light like glass. He didn't say anything at first, just looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You clean up all right," she said, breaking the silence. His voice was low. "You look like you own the night." Tessa's cheeks warmed, but she held his gaze. This is a lot for someone who said they were trying to step back from their empire. I'm not stepping back from everything, he said. Just the parts that don't mean anything. The gala was a blur of introductions and polite smiles. Tessa moved through the crowd with her camera, instinct kicking in as she captured moments that weren't staged. A couple laughing too loudly near the bar, a child peeking out from behind a curtain, a donor holding her husband's hand beneath the table. She barely noticed Roman watching her from across the room, completely still, his expression unreadable. By the end of the night, her feet ached and her memory card was nearly full. As the last guests trickled out, Roman appeared beside her. "You disappeared on me," he said. "I was working. You were glowing." She rolled her eyes, but her lips curved. "I forgot how much I loved this." "I didn't," he said quietly. They left the venue through a side exit, the night warm and quiet. Roman walked her to the waiting car but didn't open the door right away. Instead, he turned to her. "There's something I want to show you," he said. She eyed him. "It's almost midnight." "I know," he said. "Come on." They drove in silence for nearly 15 minutes, the city lights giving way to winding roads and gated entrances. Tessa didn't ask questions. There was something about the way he drove, focused, calm, like he wasn't rushing toward anything but also wasn't lost. When they stopped, the car idled in front of a modern estate tucked into the cliffs. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was undeniably luxurious. The kind of place that said, without a word, that it belonged to someone who made decisions that changed things. Tessa stepped out slowly. "This is your house," one of them, he said, leading her around the side. She followed him up a narrow path, her heels clicking against the stone. At the top, the cliff dropped away into an open expanse of ocean, and the view stretched endlessly in every direction. "You brought me back here," she said, realization dawning. Roman nodded. "I bought this property because of this view, but I've never brought anyone here." "Not until now," she turned to him. "Why me?" He didn't look away. "Because when I saw you on that cliff, I recognized something I'd forgotten, what it feels like to be real. You weren't pretending, you weren't performing, you were just there. And I couldn't stop thinking about what it would feel like to be near that kind of honesty again." Tessa's voice dropped. "You don't even know what I want." "I don't," he said, "but I want to find out." The wind picked up slightly, tugging at her hair. She looked out over the edge. "I don't know what I'm doing, Roman. I don't know if I'm ready for anything." "I'm not asking you to be," he said. "I just want you to come back here when you can, when you want. And maybe one day let me be more than a stranger at the edge of your story." She turned toward him, the moonlight casting a silver glow across his face. "And if I don't, I'll still be here," he said, "because you made the world feel different again." Tessa exhaled slowly. "That's a lot to put on someone who just remembered how to take a photo." He stepped closer, not touching her, not demanding anything. "I'm not trying to fix you," he said. "I'm just trying to meet you where you are." And for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she had to run away from the wreckage. She just had to decide if she was ready to walk toward something new. Rain had started to fall in light, rhythmic drops by the time Tessa stepped out of the town car and looked up at the soft lights glowing inside the cliffside house. She hadn't planned to come back, not tonight, not this soon. But something in her had shifted, something slow and quiet, like a tide pulling her forward. Roman opened the door before she knocked. "I was hoping it was you," he said. "I wasn't sure if I'd actually show up," she replied. "You're here." "That's enough." She stepped inside, brushing rain from her shoulders. The house was warm, the scent of cedar lingering in the air. He led her through the glass-lined hallway, past rooms filled with clean lines and quiet luxury, until they reached the small conservatory at the back. A piano sat beneath a skylight, its surface gleaming under the soft overhead glow. "I didn't know you played," she said. "I don't. It belonged to my mother. She was a concert pianist. I kept it because it reminds me of her rhythm." She saw the world in melody. Tessa ran her fingers lightly along the keys, not pressing them. "Do you ever miss her?" Every day, she turned to him. What would she think of all this? She'd ask why I haven't invited anyone to sit beside me in 10 years, he said. Then she'd tell me to stop hiding behind the business and start living like I used to. "And have you?" "I'm trying." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the soft patter of rain against the skylight. "I've been offered a gallery commission," she said. Roman looked at her. "That's incredible." "I haven't accepted it yet." "Why not?" "Because part of me wonders if it's just a reaction, if I'm trying to prove to myself that I haven't wasted all this time." "You're not the woman who stood on that cliff anymore," she shook her head. "No. But I'm not sure who I am yet." "That's the good part," he said. "You get to decide." She moved toward the window, watching the sea below shift beneath the rain. "I don't want to be rescued, Roman. I'm not trying to rescue you." "Then what are you trying to do?" "I want to build something with you, something present, something honest, not perfect, just real." She turned to him slowly. "You don't even know if I'm staying in San Diego." "Then wherever you go, I'll follow," he said. She studied his face, searching for doubt. There wasn't any. "I thought you built your whole life here." "I built my business here." "That's not the same thing." She moved closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "This started with a ruined wedding and a broken cliffside, and became the best accident I've ever had," he said. She exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders finally releasing after what felt like weeks. "Do you ever worry this is too fast?" she asked. "I didn't, until I realized how badly I wanted more time with you." She tilted her head. "More time?" Roman reached into his pocket and held out a small velvet box, no fanfare, no speeches. Just a quiet offering between two people who had already lost and found themselves in the same breath. Tessa's eyes widened. "Roman." He opened the box. It wasn't a diamond, it was a small band delicately etched with a pattern of waves. "I don't want to propose out of timing or pressure," he said. "This isn't about replacing anything. I just want to ask if you'll let me walk beside you from now on, not to fix you, not to define you, just to be there. Wherever this takes you." Tessa stared at the ring, her heart beat loud in her chest. She thought of the cliff, of the ruined dress still bagged in the back of her closet, of the man who left her without a word, of the camera that had gathered dust until someone reminded her she still had something to say. She looked back at Roman, at the man who had taken her to a gallery, not to impress her, but to remind her of who she used to be, who she still was. "Yes," she said, his breath caught. She smiled. "Not to the ring, not yet, but yes to all of it, the walking beside me, the honesty, the not perfect part, I want that." Relief broke across his face like sunrise. "I can wait for the rest," he said. "As long as it's with you." They didn't kiss right away. They stood there, quiet, steady, letting the moment settle. Later, as the rain slowed and the moon broke through the clouds, Roman led her out to the terrace. The ocean was calm now, silver and endless. Tessa leaned into him. "You never told me what you saw that first night on the cliff." He looked down at her. "I saw someone who hadn't given up, even if she thought she had." And for the first time in a long time, Tessa didn't feel like she was trying to outrun her past. She wasn't waiting for an apology or an explanation. She wasn't lost. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, with him. Tessa stood in front of the mirror inside the guest room of Roman's cliffside home, her bare feet curling into the edge of the Persian rug. She wasn't used to quiet like this, the kind that didn't feel empty but full. The kind that didn't echo loss but anticipation. Her suitcase lay half unpacked on the bench behind her, forgotten in the whirlwind of the last 2 days. Roman had given her space, just like he said he would. No hovering. No questions. Just a gentle presence bringing her a cup of herbal tea without asking if she needed it, leaving a book on the nightstand with a note tucked inside the cover. "Page 73 made me think of you." She opened the bedroom door and padded down the hallway, the house dimly lit in warm golds and shadows. She found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows, barefoot, stirring something in a copper pot. "You're making risotto?" she asked, leaning against the door frame. "I read somewhere it's therapeutic," Roman replied. "And I didn't feel like ordering in." She walked over and peeked into the pot. "You're stirring it wrong." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you a risotto expert now?" "I lived off it for a year after college. Tight budget, one pan and a lot of arborio rice." Roman stepped aside. "Be my guest." As she took the spoon and began stirring in slow, small circles, Roman leaned against the counter watching her. "You've been quiet since yesterday," he said. "I've been thinking. Tessa kept her eyes on the risotto, about how fast everything's moved. And how somehow it still feels right. Roman didn't interrupt, she glanced at him. I spent so long waiting for someone to choose me, I didn't realize I was allowed to choose myself first. He stepped closer but didn't touch her. You're not the same woman I met on that cliff. I know, she said, setting the spoon down, and I don't want to be. Roman nodded once. So what comes next? I want to take the commission, she said. The gallery offered me 3 months to shoot a collection of original pieces for a solo show. They said I could set the theme. His eyes lit with something she hadn't seen before, pride. What are you thinking for the theme? Restoration, she said. Not healing, not recovery. But rebuilding something that was never finished. He reached out slowly, letting his hand rest gently on her waist. That sounds like something the world needs to see. I'm scared, she admitted softly. What if it fails? Then we'll figure it out together, her breath caught. You keep saying we, because I'm not going anywhere. The risotto was forgotten as he kissed her slow, sure, and steady. There was no hesitation left, no lingering doubt. It wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about choosing each other, fully and consciously, with every scar and scrap of hope between them. 3 weeks later, the gallery buzzed with low conversation and the soft click of heels on polished floors. Tessa stood near the center, her hair swept up, a simple black jumpsuit hugging her frame. On the walls around her hung 15 photographs, each one raw, unfiltered, and startling in its intimacy. A child's hand reaching for light through a cracked window. An elderly woman painting over graffiti on her own fence. A man kneeling beside a sapling, dirt on his cheeks. The last image was her favorite, a shot Roman didn't know she'd taken. He was standing on the cliff's edge, jacket in hand, the wind tugging at his shirt, his profile turned into the horizon. Every line of his body was relaxed, at peace. Roman arrived late, as she knew he hated attention. He moved through the crowd quietly, stopping only when he reached her. You didn't tell me you were using that one, he said, eyes on the photo. I didn't want you to ask me to take it down. You caught me off guard. That was the point, she said. He turned to her. You look like you own this room, she smiled. I do. Roman reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I was waiting until after the exhibit. She took it, brow furrowed, and opened it. Inside was a deed. She read it once, then again. You bought the gallery building. I bought the space upstairs, he said. It was empty. I thought you might want a studio of your own, her voice caught. You didn't have to, I wanted to, he said simply. Because I believe in what you're creating, and because I want to build something permanent with you. She stared at him, her grip tightening on the envelope. You really think this is forever? I don't think it, I know it. Tessa looked around the room, all the people, the lights, the photos that had taken shape from her grief and her grit. And then she looked at Roman. She didn't see the millionaire. She didn't see the man who had stood beside her in quiet support. She saw the one person who had never asked her to shrink, who had met her pain without flinching and her dreams without limits. She leaned in close. What if I want to marry you barefoot on that cliff? Then I'll be waiting there, barefoot too. Tomorrow, his eyes gleamed. Tomorrow. The next day, just after sunrise, the cliff was quiet except for the waves below. There were no chairs, no guests. Just the sound of the sea and the wind threading through her loose curls. Roman stood in a white button-down, sleeves rolled, pants cuffed at the ankle. Tessa wore a simple ivory dress that danced around her knees. They wrote their own vows. There were no rings, just a promise spoken aloud to love without hesitation, to build without fear, and to always choose each other. When they kissed, the wind picked up, and the ocean roared beneath them like it was celebrating too. Afterward, they walked barefoot down the path, hand in hand, no rush to be anywhere else. Years later, the photo of that kiss would hang in her studio above the door. Visitors would ask where it was taken, and she'd smile and say, "That's the cliff where everything began." And every evening, after closing the studio, she'd drive home to the house overlooking the sea, where Roman would be waiting, barefoot, with a pot of something warm on the stove and a book dog-eared to page 112. Because they didn't just fall in love, they chose it. Every single day.